All right, so now let's talk about military readiness. We've talked about this before. Over 70% of young people today in the United States do not qualify physically for service in the U.S. military, either physically or mentally, emotionally, because there's just too much obesity. Not only that, there's a lot of mental illness, there's a lot of drug abuse. And so military recruiters are really having a time of it trying to meet their quotas and get a good quality candidate into the U.S. military. But to make matters worse, the military has spent, 5 or 10 years studying a new kind of PT test, a new kind of physical fitness test that would do a better job of actually gauging the readiness of our troops that are already in the military. If you have ever taken the original U.S. military PT test, the one that I took when I was in the military, it was very simple. You did 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and a 2-mile run for time. If you got, I don't remember the minimums when I was in, but I know to max the PT test when I was in the 17 to 24-year-old age group, you had to do 82 push-ups, 92 sit-ups, and a 12 minutes and 52 seconds on the 2-mile run. Now, and then that got progressively easier as you got older. When you got into the category I'm in now, basically they just put a mirror under your nose, and if it fogged up, you're good to go. Well, it's gotten to the point where troops just couldn't pass that test on the original scale. So they made it easier and easier and easier as it went along. And so it got to the point where 17 to 24-year-olds in today's military only had to pass using the same standards that 45 to 50-year-olds had to pass back in the 1980s. That's not good. So the military is coming up with this new test that would better gauge actual combat effectiveness, because believe it or not, when you're in combat, you very rarely have to do push-ups, sit-ups, or a 2-mile run. So they came up with this very complex test that takes a lot of equipment, a lot of money, a lot of time. It's very difficult to administer, where they have to do deadlifts and they have to do these weird push-ups and they have to throw a ball over their heads and all sorts of things like that. Here's what that looks like.
This new ACRT 2017 moves the ball quite a bit further up the hill in terms of testing for combat-specific readiness. It's primarily a test of your combat readiness. If you have solid, validated testing, then you shouldn't have the negative consequences of suboptimal testing. In other words, this will control for injuries because it properly conditions you for the things that you have to do for combat. You wouldn't be surprised or overwhelmed by the things that you'd have to do unexpectedly. This will prepare you for the occupational tasks that you have to do as a soldier. We call those warrior task and battle drills or high physical demand tasks. So this test gets you ready for those things. The primary purpose is to improve human performance, right? Your physical performance. Injuries are a result of poor conditioning programming. So the primary goal of this is to improve conditioning in a way that's going to stop injuries from happening, because it is a well-balanced testing and training system. So it will control injuries that way, and you will see increased physical performance, and as a result of that, decreased physical injury.
So the problem that we're running into now is that as they're starting to administer this test across the U.S. Army, what they're finding out is that very few people can actually pass it. As a matter of fact, about over 30% of people, I think it's 36%, fail the test overall of all soldiers. That's horrifying. That's really bad. But even worse than that is women. 84% of women are failing the test. Now, Vox and some other left-wing media outlets are writing articles about just how sexist this new PT test is and how horrible it is, and we've got to change the standards to make it easier for women to pass. Well, this test was created by scientists to accurately reflect the stresses that a body will be placed under in actual physical combat. Think about that for a second. If 84% of women cannot pass that test, what does that tell you? What it tells you is that women should not be in combat. Now, that was always a foredrawn conclusion when I was in the military 100 years ago. And I know I'm a dinosaur, but in the sort of PC era of the Obama administration, they removed all those restrictions and allowed women into combat arms units. Well, guess what? The military's wasted a lot of money on that because a lot of these women are not fit enough to go to physical combat. Do you want a 110-pound woman responsible for picking your carcass up and carrying you off the battlefield if you get shot? I don't think so. And I've been saying this for many years. There's a principle to the fact that we shouldn't allow women in combat, and that's the fact that men are supposed to fight so that the women and children don't have to. And call me a dinosaur, but to me, that's just millennia of traditional wisdom right there. But secondly, women are not built for the stresses of combat. And guess what? If the test is sexist because women are failing, then so is combat. Combat is very sexist. Combat doesn't care who you are or what sex you are or where you came from. Combat is what it is. And the military is supposed to be about winning. That's all. It's not supposed to be about making you feel good, roses and rainbows and pink unicorns. It's supposed to be about winning wars, killing the enemy as quickly and as efficiently as possible, devastating the enemy, and being done with it. Well, we've worked so hard to turn the military into a grand social experiment that it's come to the point where now the military is realizing it's got a big problem. And I can virtually guarantee you what they will do, rather than going back and saying, hey, we've now figured out that scientifically women, by and large, are not capable of handling the stresses of combat. That doesn't mean women are weak. It just means they're strong in different areas. And it means they're not built for the kind of stresses that combat brings. That's all there is to it. It's just the plain truth. It's not a political thing. It's not a sexist thing. It's just the truth. And so rather than going back and saying, we're going to have to close combat arms units to women, what they're going to do is they're going to lower the standards. Mark my words. That's what's going to happen. You can tell I'm a little bit fired up about that because I'm passionate about the U.S. military. I spent a good part of my youth there. My son is there. And I have recommended the military to dozens and dozens of young men and women. But I still don't think women ought to be in combat arms units. Just my opinion. And it appears that science is backing that up. So that's all we've got for today, folks. Thanks for watching The Hot Zone. I appreciate your time and attention, and I hope you'll share it with your friends. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chuck Holt.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.